Was the 2018 Halloween a worthy successor to the original, or just another sequel that brought nothing new to the table? Let's find out.
I'm not looking for escapism, I just want to escape.
Welcome back to my disembodied voice. Halloween is one of my all-time favourite horror films. I first saw it back when I was a teenager and watched it, as God intended, on a crappy VHS cassette in the middle of the night and on a decent-sized TV for its day, with all the lights out. Scared to death and now completely obsessed, I sought out the rest of the franchise up to that date and became instantly disappointed at how many creative people can butcher such a thing of beauty. And to be fair, Halloween has had some really bad times over the past few decades, including
Uncle? Boogeyman?
That was why, when I heard they were making a new Halloween with John Carpenter's involvement and they were ignoring every sequel to date, I was beyond excited. Then I saw the trailer, then the mask, and I started to have my doubts. Finally, upon seeing the film, my doubts were confirmed and I was left with the same empty feeling I have had watching each one of the sequels in turn. Now, I'm not here to hate on the 2018 sequel, and I don't want to become, they didn't make the film I wanted them to make. I'm just underwhelmed that it didn't bring anything new to the table. First case in point is Laurie Strode, played by original Scream Queen and Michael's nemesis Jamie Lee Curtis. In Halloween 2018, she's a grizzled survivor of trauma with a detached family and now lives as a paranoid alcoholic. Except we've already done that in Halloween Halloween H2O. Laurie Strode's family are estranged, apart from the granddaughter Alison, and this will be our core character cabal of motivations and personalities that we will care about, as they, much like Josh Hartnett, will always be put in harm's way in the final third of the film. We also have a Michael-obsessed doctor, which was done so much better by Donald Pleasance, and there's also the peripheral cannon fodder of disposable teens. Thank you, Marilyn. And finally, a small blogger/documentary crew who want to make the story of Michael Myers. This is perhaps the freshest and most underused part of the 2018 reboot, and it's a shame as, when we come to talk about the structure and motivations of both Laurie and Michael, should have been used so much better. When we meet this crew and Michael Myers, they are in a prison which has a giant chessboard in its yard, and the nursing staff are playing patient chess with wailing stereotypes all in check. The crew show Michael the mask, it awakens him, and then Michael escapes through various machinations involving a bus and other things, and can't be bothered to explain, until he finds said crew and retrieves his mask all too quickly. Jamie Lee Curtis also speaks to this small crew, but it doesn't have an impact apart from that she wants the money for her granddaughter. So we have a Michael-obsessed doctor who for some inexplicable reason wants Michael to be set free on a rampage, an alcoholic Laurie, and the supporting cast all in place. Even the original mask is back, now weathered by 40 years of aging, and time hasn't been kind to its impact on the screen. John Carpenter knew how to use the mask, and he contrasted its ghostly whiteness against deep blue hues, dark shadows, and, even in the daylight, he put it against greens or just out of focus so you could feel it there at all times. Even when we are in darkness, the ghostly white mask is now a grey and bland thing which sometimes is just noticeable in the background. My biggest problem with Halloween, though, isn't with Michael Myers, but it's with everyone else. We are not here to see Citizen Kane. We're here to see teens being butchered by the Shape. So, as we know that's coming, we need an activating event, some characterisation, and some bloody horror. So, what could have been done better, and what went wrong? Firstly, do we need another obsessed doctor? Michael Myers was unveiled to us as a child in 1978, and then his character was fleshed out by Loomis and his fear of what had escaped and what he would be capable of. Whether it be his paranoid ramblings, finding a half-eaten raw dog, or torrid guilt for knowing the worst thing ever in the history of humanity had escaped, we are informed by Loomis. Here we have a doctor who just wants to see what happens when Michael escapes. It's a plot device which is lazy and, as mentioned before, underuses the kind of little blogging documentary people who are making their film. Also, there is too much daylight. Microstel should have been indoors and one of the most high-secure rooms ever made. Netflix prides itself on murder documentaries. Even Saturday Night Live wrote a song skit about it, so it's natural that 40 years later we would have obsessed filmmakers and streaming giants milking the Haddonfield murders. So, when they had entered to see him, they should have been told not to pass him anything, not to show many videos of anything which could be a stimulus. Here is where the film should have started, either by these people showing Michael phone footage video of Laurie, who should have also been introduced this way, not in the actual interview itself that takes place in the film, and this is what awakens Michael. She is the one that got away, the one that activates that scintilla of comprehension inside his dissociated mind. Also, why don't the documentary crew then slip a replica mask through the cell bars, or holes in the door if they go Hannibal Lecter style? They want a photo of him holding it, but Michael doesn't move. The mask just sits there. And after waiting a while and then hearing the guard come, end scene. They leave and we remain with Michael in deafening silence. Or maybe, after 40 years, Michael's lawyer is campaigning for Michael to be moved to a low-secure hospital and only Laurie's testimony can stop this. Michael hasn't said a word in God knows how long, he hasn't attacked anyone. There's no need for such a ridiculous measure of high-secure levels. It's 40 years later, it's time we moved on. However, Michael's doctor doesn't want this, so writes to Laurie and says she needs to come and testify. Except Laurie doesn't want anything to do with Michael, throws away every letter, completely blots him out and doesn't attend the hearing, and therefore this is why Michael is moved. Either way, with those two scenarios, Laurie is indirectly or directly responsible for his release, and this creates guilt, conflict, and gives her a reason to head to Haddonfield because she knows that Michael will go to that house, the house she fought him in, and not the Myers house, because she looked into those eyes in 1978, and she now knows, she can see what he's capable of and how his mind works. We don't need a scientist or doctor, we have Laurie, and she knows what's coming. Also, this negates the need for her to be an alcoholic PTSD survivor. Nancy Thompson didn't enter the psych ward in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 as an alcoholic survivor. She was just bruised and wise to the world of Freddy. She was using Hypnosil to blot him out at night and wanting to help other survivors. Why, much like in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot, our females have to be battered old warhorses ready for the fight is beyond me. They don't need to be related, militarised, paranoid. Their world just needs turning upside down when they're faced with their oppressed nemesis. My final issue is with the final fight itself. It was just too predictable. It was a sanitised fight, only marginally better than the H2O silliness of Laurie versus Michael, which underwhelmed the build-up before it. The original Halloween was also masterful at the use of damaged psychology in its script. Myson isn't the zombified Jason Voorhees that came later on in the Friday the 13th series. He was always human. He got stabbed and poked and shot throughout the first film, but he was dissociated from reality. He was psychotic and demented, and that was why he weirdly kept regenerating and could keep going on, even when suffering serious trauma. He didn't feel pain because he was so focused and his mind was so shut down. He was a callous, empty creature who had probably been forcibly given medication, pushed around by other inmates and staff, and didn't feel pain because his mind blocked everything out. Now, Michael takes a pasting in every Halloween film, but the more shotguns and panic rooms you have, the more it dilutes the vulnerability of our protagonists. Why couldn't Laurie panic at the end, freeze under PTSD flashbacks as Michael enters, and then be on the back foot as she desperately tries to help or fight back? Yes, times have changed, and so has the equality of women, but women were always superior in slashers, as it was the woman who beat the, usually, male tormentor after surviving relentless abuse. Laurie was strong in 1978, and she should be now, but she also needs a weakness to counterbalance that. Halloween 2018 could have based the first half of its film involving Michael's escape, something we never witnessed in depth from the first film, as he's found just wandering around outside when Loomis arrives, before he heads to Haddonfield to the house where Laurie beat him. We should have had a glimpse to his strength and cunning as he outfoxes the staff, gets rapid tranked but then just stands up, while letting everyone else out their cell, using his calmness and calculating mind to engineer an escape. Michael doesn't need to be freed by a mad doctor, he can work his way out of anywhere. That was why his cell should have been such a crucial scene, the idea that this thing needs to be contained away from the human race and daylight, locked away forever, not standing there chained to a brick in the broad sunlight. The kids in the film are disposable and are either killed or escape at the last minute. One scene which should have been memorable is Oscar's death, but as the lights go out, on, and Michael moves in for the kill, it's over too quick and the film misses the chance to play with that ghostly white face. Halloween was built up using that lovely pale mask, something The Strangers copied in its original film several times many years later, and each kill was protracted and didn't always happen when we expected. Here, you know when it's coming, and there seems to be a rush to the stabbing, impalement, whatever. Also, our lead female doesn't need to be related to Laurie, but she needs to be final girl material and she also needs to suffer. Final girls in horror always suffer by losing everything and everyone, and either no one believes them or no one's there to help them. Laurie's motivations for stepping up don't have to be because it's her granddaughter. So let's take a new plot device and say Michael has escaped and the town is under curfew. However, one group of kids don't care for authority, and they're partying in Laurie's old house. Their parents are away, and kids should never do what they're told in a slasher. Being back in the house as a bruised and damaged survivor might inspire Laurie to fight past her fight or flight freeze response, or perhaps the rebellious party girl saves Laurie, who first of all fails miserably at trying to stop Michael, and we have a relationship forming between two characters. Or maybe it should have been our documentary crew all along, who, after putting their cameras in the Myers house, are sequestering themselves somewhere else, expecting Michael to come to that house instead. Either way, the aim is to move away from Laurie being Rambo, related to someone, or a paranoid alcoholic, and just try something different. Don't get me wrong, there are some good scenes in the 2018 Halloween, the teeth being dropped over the bathroom door being one of my favourites. It was just it seemed too keen to offer nostalgia to the first, rush to all the main points, and then it offered nothing new. Halloween Kills, its sequel, or threequel if we're only counting the 1978 film, is a different kettle of fish altogether and has a whole host of other problems, but as a standalone film to the 1978 version, Halloween 2018 rushes to its set pieces, has lazy motivations, and brings Laurie and Michael back in revamped but ultimately repetitive ways that we've seen before, despite its apparent keenness to start with a new slate. Fingers crossed Halloween Ends gets it right, as I like the idea of Tommy Jarvis and Lindsay coming back into the story, but as for the 2018 version, it was less reboot, more repetition. Anyway, sorry for the delay between this video and the previous ones. It's been a very difficult couple of years for me. So, until the next time, I'll catch you later.